Hello, I am Robert L. Patterson, minister for the Noble Rock Church of Christ, located at 1708 Highway 161, Noble Rock, Arkansas. If this is your first time viewing our videos, please click subscribe. The subject for today is Christmas. In America, Christmas is celebrated on December 25th, which is the traditional anniversary of the so-called birth of Christ. It is the time when family and friends come together to celebrate the birth date of Jesus, and they give gifts to one another, saying that Santa Claus gave them those gifts, which is another lie of the devil. In Ezekiel 44:23, the Bible said, "And they shall teach my people the difference between the holy and profane, and cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean." A lot of people get sidetracked or get upset because of the fact that some of us is trying to teach what God is saying. The Bible said, "Teach my people the difference." That's God talking to us in Ezekiel, between the unclean and the clean, and the holy and the unholy. And God said, and teach them how to discern it. They need to learn these things. There's a lot of things that we do contrary to the will of God, all because no one is teaching us how to get these things done in the right manner. In Matthew chapters 2, verses 1 and 11, in verse 1, the Bible said, "Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem. And when they were come to Jerusalem, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshiped him. And when they had opened their treasure, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh." Now, if you look at verse 11 very carefully, when these wise men came into the house to where Mary and Mary and her husband and that child, when they went in there, they brought gifts, but they only presented gifts unto Jesus. They did not bring his mother any gifts. He did not bring his father any gifts. They only brought them for Jesus. And that was because a king was born, and they brought him kingly type stuff to represent that holy child being born. When the so-called Christmas season comes, many men and women start preparing themselves to represent the so-called Santa Claus, which is the personification of the so-called spirit of Christmas. Usually represented as a jolly fat old man with a white beard and a red suit. And many people represent the so-called spirit of Christmas by dressing themselves in similar type costumes, pretending to be the so-called Santa Claus. During the so-called Christmas time of the year, a lot of people start getting ready to dress up like what they call Santa Claus. And they represent him in that costumes, and they might be a woman or a man, either one wearing it, but they still represent what they call the spirit of Christmas. Now, the Bible tells us to try the spirit by the spirit and find out if it's of God. There's a lot of things going on that is not concerning God. And the world, Christ told us, teach the people the difference between it. Let them know what God is teaching us. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 through 7, the Bible said, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up." God gave a specific order to how he wanted his people to learn him. He told the parents how to teach their children so that their children could learn how to teach their children about God. It is most essential that people learn how to teach people about God. If people can teach children to believe in a non-real Santa Claus, then those same people can teach children to believe in the living God. In Proverbs 22 and verse 6, the Bible said, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." My friends, listen carefully. The Bible said, train them up in the way that they should go. So a child have a right to be trained while he's a child so he can learn the thing that he must do when he become a grown person, whether it be a he or a she, that when they get grown, they would have some backbone about what God has taught them to do. And a lot of us was raised up believing in things that was not right, and the religious world was not teaching us how to get rid of those things. I am a firm believer that if Christians can be taught to believe in a so-called Santa Claus and in a so-called spirit of Christmas, then I believe that children can be taught to believe in God and in his son, Jesus Christ. If we can teach our children to believe what we're teaching them about stuff that's not even real, then them same children would believe us if we taught them what was right in the sight of God. So I believe that we should be teaching our children about Christ, about God. Let them learn about what God said. Matter of fact, that's what God told us to do, to teach our children to love him. And if we do that, the world was finally coming to one place to where we know God wants us to be, and that is to teach the whole world about his son, Jesus. In Jeremiah chapters 10, verses 2 through 4, the Bible said, "Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathens, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven. For the heathens are dismayed at them. For the custom of the people are vain. For one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workman with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not." Now these people get those trees out of the woods, and even way back then in the Old Testament time, and that's why God is teaching folks against it. They was making idol gods, and they were bringing those gods into the sanctuaries, into their homes, and they would nail them down to the floor where they couldn't move. We're doing that same thing today. When people bring those trees in their houses, they fasten them over in some corner or somewhere in the house. They can't move unless a man move them. So God is saying, don't do that. And then what do? Those people take those trees, they bring it to their homes, and they deck them like the Bible says. They deck those with silver cords. They got gold stringers. They got all kinds of stuff, and fast flashing lights and things they put on these trees in their homes. God called that, and back in those days, that was a god that those people worship. And God told us, don't learn the way of the heathens, because the heathen was doing some bad things, and God did not want his people to be lost. So he taught the prophets to teach his people how to don't follow those customs of the heathens, which was, whichever they did that was contrary to God, God said, teach them not to do it. In Exodus chapters 20 and verse 3, the Bible said, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image of any likeness of anything that is in the heavens above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth." So see, God made it very plain. He don't want people to worship anything that's made of any image at all. And he mentioned it, the graven image. And that image is how they grew those trees to set up as gods. And Paul talks about that in a lot of places in the New Testament, about how God did not want us to worship those trees or those fake or false gods. In Acts chapter 20, verse 27, as I close this lesson for the day, Paul told those men that he had met at Miletus and they had called from Ephesus, he said, "I have not avoided to declare unto you all the warnings of God." We must, as gospel preachers, be aware of all the things that God teaches us to do. And we must warn the people, because that's why the heathen kept on doing so much wrong. Nobody was warning them. So finally God got the prophets to teaching against those things. And that's our job as gospel preachers, to teach against things. Yes, there's a lot of customs that the American people love to do and the world love doing, but a lot of those things are contrary to God. And I want to warn us so that when I stand before God in the judgment, at least I would be not guilty of warning the people against the thing that God said leave alone. We need to get involved with that. And we need to tell if you're a Christian or if you believe in God, we need to tell those people that teaches you, read these verses that God is teaching us about. Tell your preacher to warn you about things that's wrong. And you study for yourself so that you can see the thing that is wrong in the sight of God. so you too can make a restitution of the thing that you're doing wrong and do right by God. Thank you for viewing our videos, and will you please help us to spread the gospel of Christ by passing our videos on to your family, to your friends. Thank you.